Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is a pleasure to have you for the second to the last edition of the news for 2020 on DBS TV. Following the tragic road accident that occurred in Dikinemiki on Sunday, December 27, leading to a loss of over 37 lives and over 18 seriously injured, the Minister of Transport has slammed a suspension on the Avenir Voyage travel agency, which owns the buses involved in the accident. The sanction on the travel agency is contained in a press release signed by the Minister Jean-Ernest Masséna Ngale Bibehe on Tuesday, December 29, 2 days after the tragic incident. The release indicates that reports from the forces of law and order who visited the scene of the accident indicated that the Interurban Transport Agency was guilty of failing to respect required road and traffic regulations, leading to the dozens of deaths and material damage. The Ministry of Transport has thus banned buses of Avenir Voyage from plying the road for 1 month. The minister specifies that this sanction is a precautionary measure which does not exclude other administrative and judiciary sanctions against the company Avenir Voyage following the ongoing investigations. Before the minister's 1 month sanction was announced, the chief executive officer of the travel agency, El Haj Yakuba Aliu, had announced that all the agencies would remain closed on Wednesday, December 30, in memory of the victims. 2 days after the terrible Dikinemiki road accident on the Yaoundé-Bafoussam highway that left many dozens of deaths and injuries, and the subsequent suspension of the Ministry of Transport of Avenir Voyage for their involvement and role in the accident, our reporters paid a visit to the Douala branch of the Interurban Transport Agency to observe the atmosphere. Our observation was the eventual shutdown of the agency, with the buses parked in and locked in the gate. Talking to some workers of the agency who agreed to talk off camera, they said they have stopped all transport activities since this morning and will do so through the 1 month long sanction. However, they added that they are still performing the service of handing over parcels that are already under their responsibility to the owners. They say this especially goes for perishables, as they fear them getting bad with them. Nevertheless, there were also buses around the premises of Avenir Voyage loading passengers at the time our reporters arrived and took off soon after. However, the buses didn't carry any name indicating the travel agency to which it belongs. Before Minister Jean-Ernest Masséna of Transport sanction, Avenir Voyage management had planned to close their doors on Wednesday, December 30, in remembrance of the over 37 victims and survivors of the deadly accident. Many, however, judged that neither their plan of a one-day shutdown nor the government's 1 month sanction is anywhere close to bringing back the lost lives or offering consolation to the bereaved families and friends. Others rather show sympathy for workers of the agency, who for a month will be jobless and probably with no source of revenue to look after their families. The Nyong Ekele Family Association, based in the USA, on Tuesday, December 29, donated hospital equipment to the Ezeka District Hospital worth 11 million francs CFA. Representing the association, Dr. Yem Frida noted that the motivation of this initiative would go a long way to accelerate the working conditions of the medical personnel, as the rail disaster of October 2016 had revealed the weakness of the technical platform of this health structure. The equipment, which consists of medical beds, a wheelchair, an otoscope and autoclave, a microscope, a sonogram, and many more, are a blessing not only for the staff and patients, but for the entire village. Traditional authorities present at the handing over ceremony blessed the gifts and the donors, while the director of the healthcare center reassured everyone on the adequate use of this equipment for the well-being of the people. Out of Cameroon, the Gabonese parliament in Libreville has adopted a new constitution by an overwhelming majority. Out of 229 voters, 204 voted for and 25 against. Initiated by President Ali Bongo, the meeting was held with the objective of filling legal loopholes. Amongst the revised provisions is Article 13 on the president's interim in the event of a vacancy in power. Previously, this prerogative was vested solely in the President of the Senate. Hence, the head of state interim will be jointly provided by the Presidents of the Senate, that of the National Assembly, and that of the Minister of Defense. The opposition had announced a subtle revision of the Constitution. With the new text, the head of state would also be able to appoint some of the senators, whereas before they were all elected. The new constitution, however, incorporates the concept of temporary unavailability, first mentioned 2 years ago when President Ali Bongo suffered a stroke when the Constitutional Court had not declared a vacancy of power. Following the death of a Sudanese civilian who was snatched while sitting at a coffee shop and later killed, widespread protests have broken out in Sudan against paramilitaries said to be responsible for his death. Baha el-Din Nouri, 45 years old, was taken on December 16 from the Kalka neighborhood in Khartoum by men wearing plain clothes and riding a vehicle without license plate, his family has said. 5 days later, his body appeared at a hospital morgue in the city of Omdurman. The family refused to take the body for immediate burial after seeing signs of apparent beating and torture. The prosecutor's office said on Monday evening that the autopsy of the man's body showed that he had suffered several injuries leading to his death. Baha el-Din Nouri was a member of the resistance committee of his neighborhood, an association very active in denouncing the regime of former President Omar el-Bashir. This sparked widespread reactions as hundreds of people demonstrated yesterday in the Sudanese city of Omdurman and Khartoum to protest his torture and death. The demonstrators gathered in front of the hospital in Omdurman, chanting punishment or hanging of the guilty, while on a banner it was written, "Stop shedding the blood of the people." They also want the end to impunity. Nouri's case is one in a series of crimes committed in the name of the state unlawfully, lawyer Wala Salah said at the rally. The incident has earlier sparked controversy around the parliamentary force, whose members once formed the backbone of a militia that rights groups say committed war crimes in Darfur. The Attorney General issued arrest warrants on Monday against several officials of a Sudanese parliamentary force suspected of the kidnap and torture to death. Voters in the Sahel state of Niger are patiently waiting for the result of the presidential elections held on Sunday, December 27, despite a bloody jihadist insurgency. The National Independence Electoral Commission on Tuesday has been announcing results from various municipalities, while the final results are expected to be released earlier today, Wednesday, or Thursday, December 31. The West African country has been chronically unstable since gaining independence from France 60 years ago, and the result of this year's presidential election is expected to mark the first democratic and peaceful transition between the elected presidents. President Muhammadu Issoufou, who was elected in 2011 and after the country's last coup in 2010, voluntarily stepped down after 2 5-year terms, noting that whoever wins, the victory would belong to the people of Niger. But it remains to be seen if 60-year-old Mohamed Bazoum of the ruling party and a favorite to win the elections will be elected in the first round or not. After After a 2-month stay in Germany, where he was treated with COVID-19, Algerian President Abdelmadjid Tebboune has returned home, ending a long period of uncertainty in a country facing a health, political and economic crisis. Algerian state television reported his return on Tuesday, December 29. The 75-year-old landed at 6 p.m. local time in Algiers and was met by several senior government officials like the Prime Minister Abdelaziz Djerab and Army Chief of Staff General Saïd Chengria. It's difficult to be far from my country, and even more difficult for someone who has a lot of responsibility, said the head of state. The president looked seemingly in good health and seems to have regained weight since his last television appearance over 2 weeks ago, when he posted a video to social media on the 13th of December, vowing to return in a few weeks as concerns were rising over the president's health. His long absence has fueled speculation over his ability to finish his term. Mr. Tebboune was last seen in public on the 15th of October when he met with the French Foreign Minister Jean-Yves Le Drian. On his return, the president spoke briefly, wishing a happy new year to all Algerians, much better than 2020, and implying he was almost cured of the virus. Prime Minister Abdelaziz Djerab said he was happy to see the President of the Republic back to his homeland and was eager to continue their agenda to achieve the objectives of the new Algeria. In Argentina, the Senate has passed a landmark abortion bill this Wednesday, becoming the 4th country in Latin America to legalize the practice and marking a historic shift in the heavily Catholic country that is homeland of Pope Francis. This makes Argentina the first big country in predominantly Catholic Latin America to allow abortion on demand. The Senate voted in a marathon debate that began at 4 p.m. on Tuesday by 38 in favor of 29, with 1 abstention, to approve a bill allowing the procedure through a 14th week of pregnancy in the traditionally strong influence of the Catholic Church in the region. Abortion in Argentina, South America's 3rd most populous country, is currently only permitted when a pregnancy results from rape or endangers the life or health of the woman. In all other circumstances, abortion is illegal and punishable by up to 15 years in jail. The new law would legalize abortion in all cases up to 14 weeks of pregnancy. Argentina's Congress has rejected the change before, but this is the first time such a bill has been presented to lawmakers with support from the ruling government. In 2018, before center-leftist Alberto Fernandez was elected president, a similar bill was rejected by a slim margin. Argentine President Alberto initially proposed the legislation in mid-November. Fernandez has been vocal about legalizing abortion during his presidency and says he would sign the measure. Massive crowds of abortion rights activists and anti-abortion campaigners gathered outside the palace of the Argentine National Congress to wait for the result, which came in the early hours of the morning after an overnight debate. Supporters of the bill greeted the news with loud cheers and, in some cases, tears of joy. Supporters have continued to wear green leading up to the Senate and lower house vote. Those who oppose the legislation have protested while wearing blue. Pope Francis, who was born in Buenos Aires, has previously voiced his opposition to the legislation, equating abortion to hiring a hitman. Following months-long negotiations and finally a deal, the European Union's top officials have finally signed the post-Brexit trade deal with the United Kingdom as lawmakers in London get set to vote on the agreement. European Council President Charles Michel and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen signed on behalf of the European Union on Wednesday morning. It will now be flown to London by a Royal Air Force plane, where Prime Minister Boris Johnson will sign for the UK before being provisionally applied as of January 1, 2021. Just after the EU's top officials formally signed the agreement in Brussels, Prime Minister Boris Johnson urged legislators in the House of Commons to back a deal that he said heralded a new relationship between Britain and the EU as sovereign equals. The UK left the EU almost a year ago, but remained within the bloc's economic embrace during a transition period that ends at midnight on Thursday, December 31, 2020. The deal would then enter into force if Britain's parliament has approved it. The European Parliament must also sign off on the agreement, but is not expected to do so for several weeks. The leaders of the European Parliament political group said they would not seek full approval until March because of the specific and far-reaching implications of the agreement. A day after a 6.4 magnitude earthquake rattled central Croatia on Tuesday, there are several casualties reported and a rise from around the capital of Zagreb. According to reports, 7 bodies have been recovered so far and a massive search operation is underway. Officials said a 12-year-old girl died in Pedrinja, a town of some 25,000 people. Another 6 people were killed in villages close to the town, according to the state television. Prime Minister Andrej Plenković said late Tuesday that officials expected the death toll to rise. Rescue teams researched overnight and found more than 20 other injured people and destroyed buildings. The magnitude 6.4 earthquake hit the town of Pedrinja, the hardest, a town 50 kilometers from the capital, where numerous rooftops collapsed under the force of the quake. It came just a day after a magnitude 5.2 quake struck the same area. The biggest part of central Pedrinja is in a red zone, which means that most of the buildings are not usable, Plenković said when he and other government ministers arrived in the area after the earthquake. Many there spent a sleepless night in fear of aftershocks, and parts of the town and the nearby town of Sisak were still without electricity on Wednesday morning. Croatia's Mountain Rescue Service said researchers aided by dogs had rescued 6 people from the rubble. The army is assisting with rescue efforts, and Plenković said there would be places for 500 people to sleep in barracks. The European Union's crisis management chief, Janez Lenarčič, was due to visit the place later in the day as the bloc prepared to send aid. That marks the end of today's edition of the news. Thanks for watching and have a great evening.